All right, I have 12 o'clock here in the Boston area, so we're going to get started. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the May edition of the AFAA New England webinar series. My name is Jerry Quinn, and on behalf of the AFAA Board of Directors, thanks for joining us today. We have a great topic, and in a first for AFAA New England, we're joined by a virtual panel of experts. They're going to provide their perspectives and opinions on the future of remote and virtual inspections, as well as where we are today. So as we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Fire Command Systems, J&M Brown Company, Mammoth Fire Alarms, Norel Service Company, Siemens Smart Infrastructure, Space Age Electronics, and TC Life Safety. Thanks again for all of our sponsors. So today's session will be recorded. So if you need to drop off at some point, or if you have colleagues who miss it today, they can view it on the AFAA New England website at any time. So John Houlihan will be leading the discussion. So take it away, John.
Thank you, Jerry. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome. We have folks signed up from multiple continents and all across the United States. So welcome to AFAA New England. Today, we've got some very exciting presentations. We're going to start with Carl Fippinger. Carl is currently a Vice President of Government Relations with Fire and Disaster Mitigations for the ICC. Kevin Carr is a Senior Fire Protection Specialist with the NFPA. And Bassem Khalil is he's currently a Senior Consultant at the Jensen Hughes in Canada. As Jerry did say, we are recording this. We will have additional PDFs of the presentations and the notes within 24 to 48 hours on our website. We encourage you to ask questions, so grab a sheet of paper, write down any questions as you think of them. We will have questions and answers after we get through the presentations. So Carl, if you would, start us off, please.
Thanks, Jerry. Thank you too. And I'd be remiss if I didn't welcome my colleague as well, Dottie Mazzarella, who's our ICC Government Relations Representative for New York and Massachusetts. So thanks for joining us too, Dottie. So let me get the presentation going here for you and say hello to everyone in New England. I am a ex officio New Englander, I guess, always a New Englander at heart. I grew up just outside of Hartford, Connecticut in Wethersfield, and became a lifelong New England Boston sports fan. My dad went to BU, so luckily I'm still able through technology to be able to see all the greatest sports teams in the world in New England. My kids are very much enjoying the race to the playoffs in the NHL right now, and have taken on the same affinity for Boston sports. So I miss the region, but good to be with other colleagues from New England today. And I'm coming to you from Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. So I'm Carl Fippinger, Vice President, Fire and Disaster Mitigation at the International Code Council, and here to talk to you today a little bit about our take on remote virtual inspections. Thanks so much for having us. Let's see if I can get this next slide to go. Okay, so just a quick little refresher on the Code Council. So we've got members in 38 countries and 377 or so chapters worldwide, 15 international codes, and nearly 2 billion people impacted by the international codes. And I'll kind of let you read the rest of the infographic there yourself. The international codes. Well, the I codes are the most widely accepted, comprehensive set of model codes used in the United States. And I just need to do a little bit of moving around here with the technology because I've got a video screen up here too. So the I codes are a family of 15 coordinated modern building safety codes that help ensure the engineering of safe, sustainable, affordable, and resilient structures. And all 50 states, including the District of Columbia and many countries, have adopted the I codes at the state or jurisdictional level. Here's a quick infographic on our family of solutions. So not only the International Code Council, where we are the kind of the parent organization, but the ICC family of solutions also includes the ICC Evaluation Service, our accreditation service, and several other entities under the ICC umbrella. So a number of things that we do beyond the codes and standards development piece, but workforce development and training, public awareness, code adoption, enforcement and implementation, certification, and we also produce evaluation reports as well as part of our family of solutions. So let's dive right into the remote virtual inspections piece. So two pieces that the ICC has published here of late, primarily brought about by the pandemic, and you'll hear this as a theme by my colleagues, Kevin and Bassem, later on. But the ICC's take on this was really to get some information out about as quickly as we could, including two documents, really an information sheet, first off, that you see on the left. It's a two-pager infographic with some text that talks about keys to success and things to consider with remote virtual inspections, and then a broader recommended practices guidance document, both of which are free to download from our website. And for those attending today, I've included those as attachments, as well as this presentation and the three case studies that I'll mention here later on in our slides. So what is RVI? And again, what's neat about this is the NFPA is working on a standard right now, which will be coming out, and you're going to hear a good bit about that from my colleague Kevin here in a few minutes. But initially, at least to get to a working definition, RVI, as the ICC sees it, is really a form of visual inspection. At its core, it uses visual or electronic aids and really allows inspectors to observe from a distance, right? So you see the graphics at the bottom where we're looking at iPads and tablets and phones and so forth. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in here in a couple seconds. So why use RVI? Well, these are a couple of extreme examples, but I think the pictures kind of help to solidify the reasoning, right? Products and materials maybe sometimes are inaccessible or in dangerous environments where we can't really get to them or see them quite efficiently or effectively, right? Or you've got circumstances like COVID or others that prevent an in-person inspection of a facility. So we talked a little bit about the technology here and get into it in a little bit more detail, right? I mean, we take a look at today's phones. The iPhone been around maybe for a little bit more than 10 years now, and it's got more computing power than the last computer that went on board the space shuttle for its last launch. So, and much of our space age technology today. So what we carry around in our hands is far greater than what put men on the moon for the first time. So RVI also allows construction projects to continue forward without impediment. So, no longer are we constrained by the arrival of an inspector or scheduling or potentially some of the delays that we've seen in the past. It's a much more efficient way of doing business, but for the right reasons at the right time. And in the right environment. So it also allows AHJs to continue providing essential services needed to ensure the safety of the built environment at a distance, but you'll see that it also really allows folks to become a little bit more efficient at what it is that they're up to in the field, right? So our guidance document breaks down really 5 key steps for a remote virtual inspection. And what I'm going to do is outline those 5 keys. I'm going to go through them here in a lightning round because we really have an opportunity to get a little bit deeper into this, ushering in all 3 of the different perspectives and that of your association here later on in our panel. So those 5 key steps are scheduling, customer prep, job site ID, inspection results, and then most importantly, how do we maintain those records of our inspections out in the field, right? So for the first one, scheduling. So this really involves the customer working with the AHJ to schedule the remote virtual inspection. And as with anything that we do, time is the critical path. Some of the things that go into that include lead time, time slots, sufficient time for inspection. I mean, I could go on and on, but I think you get the idea. Time is really of the essence here in RVI. Coordination and confirmation is another big piece, that follow-up. What kind of an inspection are we doing in the field? What's the platform? What's the hardware and the software that we're going to be using to do this? And what kind of written confirmation are we going to be able to send to the customer from the inspection staff, kind of outlining the process and the way that things go and how we should schedule this? So lots to do with scheduling and time in that piece. Secondly, customer prep. It really puts the burden on the AHJ and the inspecting agency to really outline a very clear process that's concise and understandable to just about everybody. And in many cases, it may need to be not only in English, but in other multiple forms of language as well, too. So some of the considerations under some of the customer prep pieces are, how do we help them prepare the job site and ensure the safety of the device operator? Simple things like, is your device fully charged? I mean, you'd be amazed, and I'm kind of amazed. I have 3 kids, and how many of them wake up without having plugged in a device overnight or whatever, and are surprised that they've got 10% and a low battery warning at 8 in the morning when they're up and getting ready for heading out the door, right? So high-speed Wi-Fi or cellular service, 4G, LTE, 5G is a thing now. Good lighting and visibility, necessary tools that we bring with us. Inspectors are used to bringing these kinds of things out in the field, but now we've got to make sure that the folks helping us with the inspection in the field have those same tools and resources to facilitate the inspection. Above all, approved plans, a permit card, and those kinds of things. Those are the kinds of things that we need to generally be thinking about in terms of preparing customers in the field. Also, disruptions, video and mic settings. I mean, you could go on this one, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but really one of the resounding things that we heard is establishing that first shot and look at the building too. For some of these inspections, it may seem pretty self-evident to us when we're just doing a quick fire alarm panel inspection or something along those lines. But starting at the street, getting an idea of what the building is, and that really gives you that size up as an inspector, and it may not seem as something that would make a heck of a lot of sense to do out in the field, but it helps the person at the other end doing the inspection. And then, let's follow the established order of inspection to keep things moving and efficient for the inspection, right? So job site identification. Some of the big things here include making sure that everything you need to see is going to be visible. So if it's not going to be, either there need to be provisions for it, or maybe RVI is not the right choice for this scenario. Having flexibility at the AHJ level to be able to shift dates if things just aren't quite there yet in terms of being able to assess compliance, or just punt and reschedule for a complete different time. You may not have Wi-Fi or cell service in all places. And, the other piece of this too is that you'll see this in one of the case studies coming up in Arlington, Virginia. If the RVI is too complex, then maybe based on AHJ policy, a third-party inspection service could be involved and facilitate that inspection. So again, just other things to think about. Lots more to this slide, but we'll just kind of keep on moving for the sake of the good discussion that'll follow here. Inspection results, getting the results turned around and into the permitting database as soon as possible after an RVI. You're going to have customers in the field that'll be looking for that info. So that's one of those things that's really a big piece that we see on the AHJ, is having that process and being able to follow it on a daily basis to be able to get results turned around. Post-inspection comments on your website, get them out there and available for people to be able to see. And for those that might not have quite met the bar and failed the inspection for one reason or another, be very clear upfront what the inspection process and re-inspection process, more importantly, is going to look like. Consider going virtual or electronic with all your documentation to address those deficiencies, so that we're not having to facilitate paper or potentially an in-person visit in the field unless the re-inspection really calls for that. And then lastly, as I said, maintaining records. This is the bane of everyone's existence, but there really is good news here in that for folks that have done this for years and years as a paper-based process, or just as a record-based process within buildings, if you start to incorporate RVI into your processes, well, we've got a lot to be able to draw on from today. And really what I'm referring to is that brothers and sisters in law enforcement have been at this for a number of years now with their body cam programs. So in terms of retaining records, the numbers of staff that would be needed to do that, how they're indexed, those kinds of things. Some of those things at the AHJ level may already be resident in the city or town that you're working in, and they may be available for you to simply kind of go over and get a sense of what they're doing and adopt them into your own policy and process. But at the end of the day, all of this media, all the recordings and photos, all the paperwork, it all comes down to what the AHJ has in terms of its policy and what it's comfortable doing in the wide world of RVI. So let me give you a couple of examples here really quick of candidate inspections to consider, right? And these aren't specifically listed in our guide, because the guide is really more oriented towards the kind of the building code official, unfortunately. But I took a swag at some of these because I think they'll resonate particularly with this audience. So, annual fire and safety inspections, you see about halfway down the bullet list here, fire alarm testing and compliance. I think that really resonates with this audience. And, I've spoken to several folks that have done this and had very good success with it. It seems maybe daunting in the beginning, but once a few are done and there are policies in place, then you know what, it's pretty simple to do. Means of egress, combustible storage, even looking at the emergency entry and lockbox programs out there and the compliance with that. As simple as going to, say, a Knox box on the front of the building, having someone unlock that and then walk through all of the different keys in there and walk them through the building and show you where the access is. Construction site fire safety, temporary structures, a lot of temporary structures during COVID, particularly for outdoor dining. Reinspection of deficiencies or violations is a big one as well. So in terms of benefits, there, I think, are pretty clear health and safety benefits that we found during COVID that I don't need to cover. I think, everyone has had some degree of shutdown of their office, or at least a small stutter step in the beginning, even if many of you just continued your services there in New England. But many who have closed down and gone remote have seen these kinds of things and been able to keep their staff, I think, safe and productive during COVID. The customer has a lot more control over what kind of happens during the inspection process from a scheduling perspective too. They can plan around schedule. They're not kind of standing around waiting late day, for an inspector to arrive from the site where they kind of went over time. There's a little bit more of a window of predetermined length that folks can work with. So that's a good benefit. And then eliminating that drive time, that dead time that the inspector and the AHJ has going site to site, even can be considered some of these, kind of green initiatives, right? And reducing greenhouse gas emissions and the carbon footprint as well. So those are some of the benefits. Let's get to the challenges though, right? I mean, we could fill probably multiple pages with this, but, connectivity, are we in the right place at the right time? Do we have enough data to demonstrate compliance? What's the complexity of the project? Is it a special inspection that can only be done in person rather than through RVI? Are there adequate tools on site to facilitate this? And then just how long is it going to take? The first one, I would say, plan on being longer than ones when you really get rolling with this and your customers get used to what it is that you're doing, or you are used to working with the AHJ in the case that you're part of a third party or an outside vendor. Talk a little bit about training and education. That is a big component for any program. Program considerations, developing the policy is really kind of the core of all of this. What is the AHJ comfortable with doing? And I'll show you some examples here next. That's probably the largest lift, but the good news is that associations like ours and NFPA and others like AFAA and AFAA New England, your chapter, have tools and resources to share with you, so you don't have to start from a blank sheet of paper any longer. There are lots of people doing this, and many of them are happy to share. And I'll show you 3 examples here in a couple minutes. So your policy, what's your process, then figuring out what the platform is going to be in the software, and really working on those communication skills. Listening is a big deal. Even beyond presenting and talking and trying to get the inspection points out, because you really have to spend, I think during COVID, we found that, spending more time communicating, and in particular, really listening to what somebody has to say, is a big part of being successful. And it's no different for RVI. So for customers, scheduling protocols and job site expectations, laying those out in a very clear and concise way, having a pathway to be able to follow for success on these is really key too. So it's spending that time, not only training and educating your staff and having the right policies and processes in place, but then spending time trying to put your staff in the customer's shoes and saying, what are they going to be expecting from us on the other end of this inspection? So let's hit a couple of case studies here very, very quickly. So particular to fire, one of my colleagues, Randy Metz, who's the fire marshal and battalion chief in Carlsbad, California, at Carlsbad Fire Department, joined me for a presentation we did last month to the Florida Fire Marshals and Inspectors Association. So he's got a policy in place that's, they haven't really gone all in on RVI yet, but they found it to be super useful for some of the stuff that you see on your screen. So re-inspections with minor corrections, 13D systems, less than 20 heads, 13 systems, 6 heads or fewer, all commercial cooking inspections, and then tent setups, particularly the outdoor dining, spurred this on for 5 or fewer tents. Those are the kinds of things that they are making mandatory as remote virtual inspections, and then everything else is kind of a case by case kind of basis. But if you've got these inspections and you're within the borders of the city of Carlsbad out in Southern California, these are the kinds of inspections you're basically going to be looking at doing. And this is really to show this audience from a fire perspective that a lot of this can be done, pretty quickly. And I've got their guidance document will be attached to my leave behind materials. City of San Antonio, a really big organization. This is their Department of Development Services, right? So qualifying inspections kind of run the gamut here: building, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. You can see that there's a lot of discretion given to senior staff there too. Re-inspections of 4 items or less, and then being able to talk to their senior staff about how that works and what qualifies and what doesn't. They're very accessible, and you can see a picture of an inspection that's underway in the lower right there in San Antonio. So they've got maybe 15 or 20% of their inspections are of this format and nature right now. So, I've kind of given you the West Coast view, fire only. They've gone all in, but on a limited number of things, right? And then the rest are kind of case by case. City of San Antonio, 15%, 20% of their inspections overall are these, and they include everything, from framing, plumbing, pre-pour, topping out, lots of building considerations that are maybe less applicable to this audience, but it's still a really good example. And then finally, we've got kind of the going 100% all in Arlington County, Virginia. They've gone 100% virtual inspections. They pitched it about 3 years ago. It didn't get off the ground due to reluctancy, but now folks have been clamoring for it. And when faced with coming back into the office or doing in-person inspections, surprisingly, there's been a lot of pushback to that. And maybe I should say not surprisingly at this point. People are very happy with the program, but you got to understand that Arlington County, Virginia, which is just a couple counties north of where I am, I pass through there during normal times every day on my way into the office in Washington, D.C. They've got the Pentagon to contend with. They've got the all-new Amazon HQ2 in Crystal City to contend with. They are all digital plan review, and they're doing everything: electrical, mechanical. You can see it listed here. And then they're doing it all by FaceTime, Google Duo, or Microsoft Teams. They've narrowed it to those 3. Pick whichever one works best for you, and that's it. In the case of, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, the complex inspections, they may be completed by a third party in accordance with their county policy, but again, that's kind of strict. And some of the places where they've had challenges have been in those, the needed in-person special inspections. They're contending with those, but by and large, 100% virtual inspections moving forward, and that's not going to change anytime soon for them. They've embraced it, and as has their construction community. So for additional information and wrap up here, simple, just go to the ICC website at iccsafe.org/RVI. You'll find that Keys to Success document and the recommended practices guide. You'll also find a link for feedback in there where you can give us your questions, best practices, and lessons learned. I'd also be remiss if I didn't put a quick shameless plug in for the Fire Service Membership Council. It's something that anybody from this group and anybody from the public, other interested parties, are welcome to join. We do monthly meetings, and it's our policy advisory board to the ICC Board of Directors. So we are chaired primarily by ICC members, International Association of Fire Chiefs members from the Fire and Life Safety section, and then also our partners at the National Association of State Fire Marshals, or NASFM. Again, monthly meetings are open to the public, timely topics and guest speakers, and we're at iccsafe.org/FSMC. And then finally, my information is here, and it'll be in the handout as well. That's my direct line and my personal cell, along with my email. So thanks so much for the time today. Looking forward to the discussion, and back over to you, John.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Carl. That was terrific. Before we get to Kevin, I just wanted to let the folks know that have joined since we started at noon that this presentation is being recorded. We do have the video and in addition, the presentations to share online afterwards. So now we're going to hear from Kevin Carr with the NFPA. Kevin, you all set to go? There he is.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for the time. Carl, great presentation. We're going to cover a lot of the same materials here too, but I think what's really great is that you're seeing, and Bassam's really going to bring it home for everybody to see some great uses of RVI and remote inspection as a concept. But we're going to talk today a little bit about the 915 process. I have the great pleasure of being the staff liaison for the NFPA 915 Technical Committee. They're a great group of folks. And I think what is really interesting about this, as Carl had mentioned in his presentation, is just how widespread the possible applications are for remote inspection, and what some folks are doing and where they have this comfort level. And I'm finding that that's changing as time moves on. So we'll kick this thing off and we'll deal with a slide right up front that I'm sure we're doing it now. It's this new normal. You take us back to 2019, and remote inspection certainly was a growing and burgeoning topic. It was being used in a variety of different ways, but certainly COVID hits, buildings shut down, and there's a need at some point to get in and do some kind of inspection. So perhaps that AHJ, that building owner, or maybe even a contractor who didn't feel that remote inspection was really time for that, now all of a sudden needed to be able to do that in a variety of ways to keep things moving forward. So this new normal as we go through is going to be interesting for the remainder of 21, 2022 and beyond. How does remote inspection really fit into where things are going? Clearly, there's a lot of guidance that's out there now. ICC's got some great stuff. NFPA's got some great stuff. There are folks that have been doing remote inspection for years. They have items as well. And I think that what you're going to see is that as things begin to standardize, hopefully folks will be able to utilize that to facilitate these remote inspection programs. So I keep using this term remote inspection. Carl used RVI. I've heard so many different names for this. So what does it all really mean? I think what you see predominantly, or at least what I'm seeing predominantly out in the field, is sort of that remote video inspection, using some sort of video software on a smartphone or a tablet to be able to facilitate that inspection, to have the conversation back and forth about the particular component that might be installed. Maybe it's a fire alarm panel, maybe it's a device, could be anything. You also see things like photographs that are being used where it's maybe more of a stationary type of installation, or it could be an alteration. You see a variety of other types of medium that are not maybe as prevalent, but could be utilized depending on the specific arrangement. So whenever you see RVI, RI, it could be remote video, remote virtual, I want you to think of remote inspection as that umbrella that encompasses so many different types of inspection. And really all it's doing is it's supplementing that in-person inspection. Now, I think when we go into some of these things, as Carl pointed out, and I know Bassam's really going to walk through some more of the real field work on what actually happened in the field, we have to take some considerations into account. These are 4 basic considerations that are provided further in the guidance material that we have, and it is baked into the NFPA 915 standard. I think as a starting point, if you're able to remember these and implement these as you go through, you're going to be able to help either convince someone to perform a remote inspection and or get to that desired result. So the first thing, believe it or not, is RVI, remote inspection, is not for everything. Much like the hammer is a great tool, it is not really used for everything. And don't get me wrong, folks, I'm a huge proponent and I do support remote inspections. I think it's a great opportunity for folks to be able to utilize the technology to solve problems in ways that afford you time savings, cost savings, and ease of use. But we have to be real and say this tool might not be for everything. So let me give you an example. If you have some sort of system that's installed in a basement with poor lighting, maybe poor cellular service and no Wi-Fi. You might have an individual on site performing the inspection that isn't as versed in the system that's installed. That system could be complicated. And the person on the other end of the inspection may not have plans, may not have documentation. There may not be a sequence for that individual to really know what they're looking at. I don't have to tell you, in that case, it may not be the best use for remote inspection. And you know what? That's okay. I don't think anyone's saying that remote inspection has to replace the traditional in-person inspection, but it's another tool in the toolbox for folks to recommend as they go through to facilitate that inspection that would be best suited for the environment. That being said, this is a huge concept that's baked into 915, and it's that the remote inspection should be greater than or equal to that in-person inspection. So we all know what an equal to inspection would be, but what is a greater than inspection? There's a lot of ways to achieve this. I think of two specific examples. One would be a case where if you were on a site that had multiple structures and it had systems on each of these roofs. Now, whether you needed a ladder, whether you needed a set of stairs, and the time that was involved to go to check out even a portion of those, is a time-consuming and potentially, unsafe endeavor. Maybe with the permission of the AHJ and with a good plan in place, you might be able to use something like a drone to be able to actually facilitate that type of inspection. We are at that point where technologies such as those could be viable uses for this type of remote inspection. Another example that might be more pertinent to this audience, you go into a lot of commercial office space, there's an atrium, maybe in the lobby, there are devices, there's ducts, there's things at the top of that atrium, maybe a high-powered camera, maybe a drone, maybe some other way to be able to visually see it up close, even better than you could from ground level. That could be an example of a greater than inspection. And I think that's a key point to be able to try to get the use of remote inspection, is that when it's done correctly, there is opportunities to get a greater result than that in-person inspection. And to me, that's a huge point. 3, like everything else in life, I think how we communicate and how we work with folks is really going to help truly dictate that end result. 3 key groups of people, don't think I have to explain it really in detail to each of you, would be the building owner, the AHJ, and of course, you all as the installer, contractors, and the folks that supervise that work. If 1 or 2 of those parties are on board, but 1 is not, clearly that remote inspection, or if it was an in-person inspection, would not be able to be performed as well as if all 3 parties are communicating. And to do that, common sense is going to dictate you're going to need some compromise, but you're also going to need a detailed plan. So that's really where it gets down to making it happen. Remote inspections are not generally just showing up, throwing a phone up to the particular device and walking through. It would be similar to preparing for that in-person inspection, whether you're, no matter what the system could be, no matter what phase of construction that you're at. Some plans might only be a page long or a few different items that need to be reviewed ahead of time. Others, depending on the complexity, might require a more detailed plan to be able to facilitate. So having that plan in place is going to help you and all of your stakeholders get to that desired result. But I think importantly enough, where it is new, particularly maybe for building owners and AHJs, is to being able to show them, hey, this type of approach can work. It can be beneficial. And in some cases, it could be even better than what we've done traditionally in the past. So that's some high level points to consider. Let's talk a minute about 915. And in a way, it really is that next step. It's attempting to standardize the remote inspection process and provide a pointer within the codes to say, whether you're in NFPA 72, 101, a building code, it could be anything, to say, yeah, there is a standard on how to do these types of inspections. And maybe at some point down the road, those codes might consider pointing to this particular document. So beginnings for 915, it's a relatively new document. It's a relatively new technical committee. It's about 2 years old. That's not to say, as many of us know, and I think as Carl pointed out in some of the examples, there are folks that have been doing remote inspection, remote virtual inspection, or some iteration thereof for decades. This is not necessarily a new concept, but the widespread use, the widespread adoption, certainly, as it even is picking up now, it's not standardized at this point. Jurisdictions or certain organizations are writing their own requirements. 915 is looking to standardize those. Our current status of where the technical committee is at. Two main things. Number one, the NFPA process, and I'm happy to chat process with anybody on how NFPA process works. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with how it works, but one of the key pieces is this piece of submission of a public input. This is an opportunity to provide you as the public, anybody can supply a public input to say to the technical committee, hey, I think this should be added. I think this should be changed. I think this should be deleted. And it gives that technical committee the ability to look at something and say, hey, we didn't consider this, or maybe we need to modify this and make some changes to the document. That is a huge piece, and we are in that phase right now. So if you have an interest in that, hold on for a moment. We're going to get to there in a minute. I think the other piece is that the technical committee will be meeting this year and next year in the attempt to finalize a document for release in late 2023. That standard hopefully will be out as it goes through the process, but NFPA 915 is happening. It is happening to standardize this process and hopefully be a useful tool for AHJs and everyone alike. We talked already a little bit about the participation piece, but truly this is an opportunity for each of you in fire alarm industry to be able to participate and get in on the ground floor. This is a brand new document. I know documents like 72, NFPA 1, 101, 25, they've been around for a while. This is a brand new document. This will be the first edition coming out, and really is an opportunity for folks to supply input and provide some ownership to this document on how it's being used. I think as Carl pointed out, and as Bessem's going to show in a few minutes, you know, there's temporary use. There are folks that started off using remote inspections that have on a temporary basis, but have now transitioned to permanent, and then some will go back to temporary. And there's considerations because it's a fast moving field. And as technology changes, that can drastically impact the standard as well. This is your chance to participate. Post-meeting, happy to chat with anybody in terms of how to set you up to be able to participate in that process. Here's a quick resource slide. We're going to end with this at the end. It's in the handouts as well, so no need to really feverishly write it down if you're interested in that. Again, public input is a huge piece, and that's closing in about 4 weeks. So if you have an interest in that, I strongly encourage you to participate in the process. We're going to spend a moment to talking about this 915 page in a second. This is a profile page and how to create a login. But this RVI page has some guidance. It has some blog posts. It has news. It has a whole bunch of information on temporary stuff that can be utilized to be able to really kick off any type of remote inspection, RVI type of program that you might have or might have interest in. A moment on the NFPA website pages. So several of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this. Most of the NFPA document pages all look the same, and they're all going to look like this. One thing that's interesting is this toolbar that's right here across the bottom. You're able to really standardize this across documents and check things out. Ask a technical question, finding out who the technical committee is, and then this piece here, submitting the public input. It's right there on that home page. Once you log in, you're taken right to the document, and you can submit a public input. The document in and of itself is 8 chapters. It's a pretty quick read. It's not something that's 300 pages that's going to be real difficult to get through. I think the technical committee has done a great job of putting it together in a way that it's packed with information, but it's not the longest document in the world to read. So I highly encourage you to check that out. Wrapping up on our portion is 3 main things. Number 1, 915 is happening. This standardization of the remote inspection process. I think is a good thing for everybody. It's going to point to some accepted criteria that folks can utilize in jurisdictions or with building owners or in your own industries to be able to say, you know what, these are some really good tips and tools, and they're standardized so that hopefully you go from one site to the next and you might be able to use these same concepts if you're doing a similar type of inspection, okay? Number two, that public input date. I'm begging you, I'm imploring you, please participate in the process. Check out the document, see where things are at. Use this as an opportunity to contribute to that, because I think ultimately you're one of the end users of this document, and I think your input is extremely valuable. Three, those four main points that we talked about, they are high level. I know they're not necessarily prescriptive, they're a little bit more performance based, but boy, oh boy, you can, if you apply those, I think you're really going to be able to have a great inspection program to begin with. Really, at the end of the day, this is some of those websites that I had initially talked about. I'm looking forward to the Q&A section, and I really look forward to what Bassem's got to show you, and I'll turn it back over to John. Thank you so much for the opportunity, everybody.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And thank you for pointing out the closing date of June 1st. As an organization, Automatic Fire Alarm Association New England will help you. If you do have a public input and you just don't know how to phrase it because you don't speak NFPA, we can certainly help you. We can take it on and submit it as an association if you're not comfortable submitting something as an individual. And if you have coworkers that use GoPros, or if there's a kid in the neighborhood that has a drone that's always flying over the house, ask them how it works and how we can get some of this into the standards, because it is going to be more performance based. I know we all love our prescriptive codes. It helps make us feel like we stay out of trouble. But you know, to Carl's point, 2007 was the first iPhone, and now we have more technology than we can physiologically take in. So with that, buckle up, because Bassem Khalil has been working with this technology for a very long time, over 10 years. He's done some very creative and interesting projects, and we're very excited to have Bassem show us what the ICC and the NFPA are putting together and how it can work in a real life situation. So Bassem.
John, thank you so much for the introduction. Carl and Kevin, thank you for the presentation. It's amazing. Guys, as John said, buckle up, and if you get dizzy, just let me know. My presentation is gonna go a bit fast, so bear with me. So just a quick introduction on who we are at Janssen News. We are the global fire and life safety, security, and risk-based engineering worldwide, with offices in almost every corner in the whole world. Today, I'm going to be discussing giving you guys a quick background and history on remote inspection. How we started this maybe 20 years back when I was still working as a government official with the United Arab Emirates government. What are the objectives we are looking at? Some of the best international practices and methods, and I'm going to talk about the UAE case study. And if time permits, I'm going to show a quick use, or give you a high level use on how 3D scanning and object recognition could be used with remote inspections. So background history, and in 2012, we first introduced the remote inspection idea with the United Arab Emirates Abu Dhabi Civil Defense to hand over the iconic Cleveland Clinic, a $1.9 billion worth of project at the capital. In 2015, we needed to standardize the process, so we created our first form of a guideline or a standard for remote inspections. But we thought, as a code committee back then, why not go to the best people or the best organization who's building codes and standards. So we submitted a request to NFPA and it got accepted. And this is the NFPA 915, what we are talking about today. And Kevin gave us like an introduction about it. So to us, remote video inspections is simply an inspection communication reporting method intended to enhance inspection and testing capabilities remotely, packaged and delivered in an innovative, practical, and smart way. For many years, I've been thinking in all of my experience, everything around me was just moving on, developing. But our core business as inspections and life safety plan reviews has been the same. We needed to move on and we needed to go and achieve a higher level of quality, make sure that processes, installation, and policies, regulations are being performed and followed not only as an equivalent matter to what we are doing on day-to-day basis, but even higher and better. So we set our objectives generally: enhance inspection quality, achieve high levels of safety, reduce inspection costs, save time, develop new training tools and materials. And in just a minute, I'm going to show you how that all looks like. But for me personally, my passion was regulate the unregulated parts of an inspection. If we go hand over mega project, a super high-rise building, and I'm talking from the government perspective right now, or even a consultant, no one would be able to inspect each and every sprinkler head. It's just not realistic. So we needed to come up with a way to make sure that while I'm building the building, nothing is installed in a wrong way. I don't have any problems. So I'm avoiding any problems during construction to avoid later on that the fire inspector or the building inspector is coming back, giving me comments, I have to fix them, and I don't do them right, then I have to repeat it, and everybody knows the story. So that was our objective. And with the kind of projects were built at that time, we needed to be sure 100% that the quality of what we are doing is at utmost priority for us. To simplify remote inspections based on how they are done, so we have what we call live virtual inspections. So this is what we have all seen in the last year. So someone on site with his mobile phone, somebody is sitting behind the screen and doing the inspection. Then we have what we call remote pre-recorded video inspections and 3D scanning. And I'm going to go deeply on that. Then we have what is known for as post-construction building and system monitoring. Many cities have their systems, full systems are monitored, especially fire and life safety systems are monitored. Example, Dubai and many cities in the United Arab Emirates. So as mentioned, I won't talk a lot about that. Live virtual inspections are very common, okay, and recommended to be used for periodic and simple re-inspections. After years of experience, we found out that if I want to do it live and I want to really save time, so I need to do simple things. For example, I'm re-inspecting at some tags on a fire door in some remote areas. When I first visited the site, it wasn't there. I had to go back, travel for a couple of hours to see some listings on a fire door. It's not really needed to be done in person, similar stuff. What I should warn you about that, if it's not planned properly, the remote inspection, especially the live one, you're going to end up losing days and days of work because you run out of battery. You need to have your backup power pieces. You need to have stands. You need to have proper 3G and Wi-Fi connections, which in most of the cases and in many construction sites are not available. So I'm going to focus today on remote pre-recorded video inspections, and those are really good and applicable for building final testing and commissioning, where inspection videos are audited mostly by a third party before submitting to AAG at the end. And I'm going to just show you an example of that. So UAE, Abu Dhabi Civil Defense, have been doing that now for more than 13 years. I'm going to stop sharing, then I'm going to share another platform and share with you how we did it. So as mentioned, it was Cleveland Clinic Hospital, the first project we do. So it was summer at that time. For you who have visited the GCC countries, in summer it's really hot, okay, and summertime also there is vacation, so there's a lot of pressure on the fire department, and we had to inspect quickly the building and take a timely inspection on it. So that was the first one. The second project was ADNOC headquarters. That's an oil and gas mega high-rise building in Abu Dhabi City, the capital of UAE, and the Louvre Museum, and many more. So basically, the process is very simple. If you want to go and do a full inspection and testing, and I'm just focusing on testing in here because testing is different than inspection, and we have been discussing that a lot in our code committee at the 915 committee. So we need to do, first of all, a gap analysis, understand what are my objectives and what do I need to do, and what are the gaps I have right now where I can utilize remote inspections to improve my process. So at that time, we had high speed of development, limited number of skilled trained manpower, limited number of certified trainers. We had an issue with training as well. If you go, anyone who was working in the GCC countries, you go visit as a guest for a couple of years, and you move on and take and carry all of your experience with you when you leave. In addition, that there is no knowledge transfer system or a strong knowledge transfer system in the market. It's not there yet. So, and in addition to the high cost of training as well. So that's my gap analysis. I set my objective. I want to reduce costs, save time, provide quality services, develop new learning tools, achieve the highest levels of safety, and ensure at the end that I can achieve knowledge transfer. So for us to be able to do that, we needed to have a clear legal frame and authorization. We did it under the UAE law, and then we started doing it by creating what we called filming scripts. So a filming script is basically a detailed inspection checklist with how to do it. And you can notice here that at that time we called it DIP instead of remote inspection program, and a friend just advised, stay away from the rest in peace part and keep it DIP. So that's why we called it DIP at that time. So going back to our discussion, a checklist is going to be distributed to the contractors probably at shop drawing stage, at shop drawing review stage, so at early stages. We bring everyone, the client, the authority having restriction, contractors, and explain to them what we want to achieve and what is our purpose. And if everyone agrees, then we proceed with the program. And that's a very important, again, piece of a point of success of the whole program. So it has to be communicated at early stages in the project. So we have done it all. We handed over the building from a fire life and safety perspective full. We did the full fire alarm systems test to NFPA 20, sprinkler testing, passive systems, blackout generator testing. We did it all, so nothing was left. We ended up with around 8 to 9 packages of systems to be handed over. So, and we did it for all of these projects. It was done in that manner. So we got a wealth of videos which we had in our hands. So what we do with them, we wanted to improve training. We agreed with the movie theaters at that time with occupancy mostly at 5% during weekdays. So you can just go attend, buy a ticket, attend the training presentation on your way out. You get a certificate. If you want to get certified and do the exam, you can always come back to the fire department and do it. Then that was not enough. Inspections can only prove that the systems are operating properly. But if I want to go for testing, I need to make sure that everything was done and installed as per the approved drawings and correct specifications. And this is where the 360 scanning comes in. So with the 360 technology scanning, we scan the building and we just match it to the BIM models if it's available, or you can just measure it on site, and I will just show you how it's done. And we had future insights to create 3D fire safety training films and many other initiatives, and many of them are being done right now. So I will stop sharing again, and I will go back to my original presentation. Okay, so this is how we implemented the 3D scanning in the Warner Brothers theme park in Abu Dhabi. The 3D scanners were already used in the building to make sure that all the decorations and stuff built inside are done accurately. So we are targeting 0 error. So we scan, we compare, okay, and we end up with similar deviations which were corrected already. So we scan the piping. So we want to make sure that video filming is showing me how the system is operational. Scanning show me how it's being done properly. Okay. Some additional resources on remote inspection. So one of the published articles was published at the SFPE Engineering magazine, and NFPA, of course. ISO has issued a great guideline, and including the ICC as well. I will show you how does the final outcome looks like. The quality you're gonna see right now is not, let's say, the norm or the standard, but this is how the government of UAE wanted remote inspections to look like. So what you can see right now is the inspections done in the Louvre Museum before the opening. You can see the quality. We got our filming crews and everything. So we did a smoke test. So this is done in one of the galleries, live smoke tests.
Sam?
Yes?
That screen's not sharing.
Okay, again.
Can you pull that third one over?
Yeah, sure. So is it on now?
It's coming. There it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, again, I was saying that that's the Louvre Museum. So this is one of the galleries where we did the live smoke testing, filmed it, fire hose test, sprinkler testing, a bucket test. So this is how basically it looks. Of course, we had sites being prepared. That's a foam monitor test on top of the high-rise tower I showed you before. And in the next pieces, we're going to show you how we use drones even in inspection and in passive testing. So fire stopping, how we did it. So now today, we don't have to get all of this filming crews or filming gear to do the filming. Our mobile phones and the technology available in our mobile phones is enough to give me the product I need. What's really good about that, one of the benefits, that we have audio visual proof that the buildings were done, the inspection was done properly. Yeah, I end up with amazing training material to give to my junior staff as well. And insurance companies, believe it or not, love this. So what you see now is Sheikh Khalifa Medical City in Abu Dhabi as well. So we use drones in here to measure the flow of the fire water, measure spaces between fire hydrants. And at the end of days, I had some budget left with me. So I started creating infographics to explain, for example, what's the difference between a travel distance, a common passive travel, etc. So normally, if I'm teaching that program in an NFPA class, it would take me like half a day, while I can do it through an infographic into 3 minutes. And this is how it looks like. So of course, remote inspections, for me, it's the sky is the limit. Whatever you can utilize in creating your final deliverable, just use it. There is no norms. And as mentioned, we need to identify at the beginning what our objectives are. And finally, for my final piece of presentation, and here I'm going to show you how the 3D scanning works. So that's an actual model 3D scan where I can just move on, and if I want to measure, for example, the distance from that point to that point, I can do it. Okay. these technologies are available and it's not expensive and basically available for everyone. And day by day, new companies, new applications are coming up. So thank you so much for your time. Hope I did not bore you guys.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you very much. The chat is open if folks want to start to submit some questions. We did have a couple of questions submitted at registration. So if Carl, Kevin, and Bassam, if you want to take turns. The first one we have is, as an installer, how would I get my authority having jurisdiction to participate in remote or virtual inspections?
So basically, I would say just communicate with them at the beginning, but be very careful. Don't proceed with a remote inspection unless you are 100% sure that the authority is going to do it. And if I were in your place, I would just show them the benefits and what are we adding to the process. I have seen a lot of building officials and accept the process, and as Carl mentioned, it's starting to be used widely. I know of many fire departments who are 100% virtual right now, and they are not going back even to in-person inspections. So you need to explain it and communicate with them at early stages of the project.
Kevin or Carl, did you have something to add, or?
I'd echo what Bassam said, which is, maybe there is an opportunity for the installation community to introduce these concepts into the AHJ environment. But, as with anything, just like we do in the fire service, if you've got a great idea, you got to bring others to it, right? So if you're an installer and you want to bring an AHJ to that, I think there's probably an investment that's an upfront investment that's worthwhile to be able to highlight the benefits, but also, I think as Kevin did a really good job, talk about some of these pitfalls and challenges and work with the AHJ to develop those processes and that policy and be a good partner to them. Open communication, as Bassam said, is really the first step. I think being proactive and kind of going back and forth with these concepts and talking about what works and what doesn't work in that any particular environment is a super important conversation to have. The more work that you're willing to do to help bring the AHJ to that world, and if you can leverage maybe some of your other colleagues that are doing this in other jurisdictions to be able to show success, maybe other pitfalls that have been experienced and ways through that, is going to go a long way in being able to convince the AHJ to either develop a program or enhance a program for the kinds of things you're looking for. So, Kevin?
Great points, guys. The only thing I tack on to that and hammer this point home in my talk was that greater than approach. Anytime you're trying something new, and I think we've all been through phases in our careers where you're trying to bring something up that's brand new. Nobody really generally likes to be the guinea pig, right? And try to have something blow up in their face. So if you can provide some comfort to the AHJ, particularly on those items where you could have a better inspection than the traditional in-person, there's guidance that's already out there. There's great examples, like just some of the stuff that Bassam showed is just, it's awesome stuff. But there's some just great stuff that's out there, and particularly with COVID, we've just seen a lot of examples. So if you can bring that comfort level up on something that could be better than the in-person, maybe the next time around, it gets a little easier as you go. It's always those first few out of the gate that are really, really challenging. So that would be my recommendation, but totally agree with Carl and Bassam's points.
Excellent, thank you. Those are really good points. And I like the idea that you all touched on with starting small, re-inspections, some of the smaller items once the major components have been addressed, which brings us to our next question. Do we lose inspection quality and maybe inspection honesty when we move from in-person to remote? We can only see in a remote inspection, we can only see what the cameras are showing us. So would you folks like to take turns at, do we lose inspection quality when we move from in-person to remote inspections?
For me, from what I've seen over 13 to 14 years of more of remote inspections, you don't really know actually, for what we have seen, it's a more detailed process, and especially if you're going to film it, because if you're going to film it, you have to do it right by the book, so nothing is missed. It's way better than even normal inspections, I would say, subject that it is planned correctly. Contractors and consultants are trained well before the process. Definitely, it's a better way of doing it.
Yeah, I could follow up on the domestic side with that, as I know my colleague Bassem has much better understanding of this on the international level too. But this is a good question because literally it's been asked at every one of these sessions that I've done, and we've done a number of them so far. So the resounding point that I've heard, and maybe not as much from ICC, but from our members and other members in the community, has been the HJ retains the authority no matter what, right? So in terms of inspection quality, there's not been any drop off in terms of did we miss something? You know, is there? It's no different than if it was missed in person, right? They've not to a T, and I've not heard any exceptions to this. The process is very much the same as an in-person would be. The re-inspections are the same way. If something gets dropped or missed, whether that be on the inspection side of the house from the AHJ side or the contractor side of the house, they just do the follow-up like they normally would, and any of those exceptions get taken care of in the process. So I would say that, you know, folks that have used this process are pretty firm in their support of it. And, you know, it does look promising, you know, moving forward. It's kind of all in really what you make of it. And just remember that, you know, not at all does the AHJ relinquish any authority in here. And anytime an inspection needs to be done or a re-inspection, they can call for that and maintain the quality that they need to in the process.
Agree with those points. I think 915 really tries to touch on a lot of those. And one of the things that, if you read it, chapter 5 is about location and timekeeping, timestamp requirements. So, you know, are you at the right spot? And by the right spot, could that be you're at the physical address on the right floor, at the right room, at the right component? So you're really drilling down into specifics. And I think, like everything else, a lot of it comes back to is if you go back to those components, using the guidance, have a good plan. And if you have the comfort up front with the AHJ and a good relationship, you have an agreed upon plan, and you're following these benchmark standardized types of things, your chances for an inspection to be successful for everybody, the AHJ, you, and of course the owner of the structure or the site, is going to be paramount. So these types of common sense approaches, the more time you put in up front, and that investment of time really is going to pay off for you in the long run.
John, just one follow up too that's really kind of forward looking to what both Bassem and Kevin said, which is part of the discussion that has branched off of this question has been, you know, we're kind of, it's resulted in we're kind of okay for now, right? And what I mean by that is that, you know, we're looking at current context in, you know, 2019, 2020, COVID bringing this about quite a bit. And really the folks that are using the technology, particularly from the AHJ and inspection side of the house, are folks that are seasoned inspectors that have done this kind of work in the field previously. They may not have been the earliest adopters of technology, but they've come to it and learned to use it. Now, where the gap is going to be, and some of the things that maybe we'd look to, you know, I'll give another shameless plug for the NFPA process that I know Kevin wants his comments and feedback in by June 1st. One of the things you may want to comment on is including something in that document to talk a little bit about the future of RVI, and when we start to bring on inspectors that have grown up really only in digital world, so they're very familiar with the technology, but they may not have had that opportunity to be out and get that same degree of hands-on knowledge, skills, and experience that we see with our seasoned inspectors in the field today. You know, maybe there are going to be some gaps and things that we'd have to address through some of this tactile learning in the field to make sure that, you know, whatever the standards are, again, that are underpinning the inspections process, right? And there's some really good ones that are out there, of course, you know, the 1031 standard is obviously the first one that comes to mind. I'd tell you that, you know, maybe that's something that we need to look at, is that, you know, that knowledge and experience and the skills of our future inspectors aren't going to be as keen as the folks that we have today in the field. So we may need to do something training wise or experientially to get them out there to help them get that experience, to know what they're looking at behind the screen.
Excellent. Thank you for that. The next question is a little bit more specific to fire alarm. And the question is, would there be a required third-party interface with the fire alarm system to go along with these types of inspections or tests?
For me, in all the projects we have done remote inspection via pre-recorded video filming, we had fire consultants and third party on board. And that was already a mandate because of the size and complexity of the projects. But specifically to address the question, I believe if the contractor is a certified contractor or a licensed contractor, mostly you won't need to have a third party, although it's always an added value. And while I was wearing the hat of an AHJ back then, I will always feel comfortable having a third party on board. Definitely having a third party will add value and give more credibility to the product delivered to AHJ, and will save a lot of time because it's much more easier to communicate with the third party because that's what they're doing. That's their job. For an AHJ, if you want to reach out to them on frequent basis, they might not be as accessible as a third party.
Go ahead, Kevin. This is really oriented to you guys, because I think my response is going to be good to follow yours.
Okay. I think tacking on to what Bassem said, I think this also offers an opportunity for you all, particularly with like a group like NFPA 72. I know there's certain other documents, both in NFPA and non-NFPA, that may have an annex. They may have actual requirements on how to actually connect their systems and deal with it in the digital aspect and what it's looking for. But I think a key piece on top of that's going to come into play is, yeah, third-party individuals, but now we're dealing with third-party potentially software. You're dealing with all sorts of different aspects. Commenting on that on the 915 side of the house is good, but also reaching out through all of the different SDOs and saying, hey, in your particular scope of your document, how would you perform remote inspections or allow it? And particularly for the fire alarm industry and the folks on this call, this is your opportunity to provide some comment and guidance on that, because frankly, 915 is a general remote inspections document, and it has to cover a lot of different things. So it's a great opportunity, both from a perspective of the third-party individual, but third-party software and how systems ultimately might communicate a lot more. And that seems to be the trend of where things are going over the last few years, and certainly seems to be accelerating.
Yeah, good one. And I think just to follow up on that, I would encourage everybody, just as my friend Rob Neal put in the comments here too, he's always going to be an ICC guy at heart, I think, even though he's out in the consulting world on his own these days. You know, get involved in the process. And, you know, we've got a couple different ways to do that. The first one is the obvious one, which is Rob just put in the comment section there, getting involved in CDP Access, which is our venue to be able to submit a code change proposal to the next code cycle, right? And then what I would also say is that we've got a very specific group that is called our COVID task force that we put together. It's a pandemic task force, actually. And the pandemic task force has come together with several different work groups. There is a fire work group that I'm the staff liaison to. There is also kind of this remote work group, a remote technology work group, where the remote virtual inspections piece is being addressed. So I would say participating in that process and learning these best practices, lessons learned, and capturing some of those outcomes for potential code change proposals in the next process is going to be really important. And the reason why I say that is because right now our fire code committee is hearing proposed changes to the 2024 International Fire Code and all the other Group A codes that we have. So it may be some time before we're able to capture some of this stuff. So the more you get it in while you're thinking about it and you remember it, the better off we're going to be to get it in the process for the next cycle. So I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Thank you for those answers. And a shameless plug for Automatic Fire Alarm Association New England. If you did submit that question, our June education meeting is going to be with multiple manufacturers on cloud connected fire alarm panels and fire alarm systems. So to the point of that question, that technology is here, it is in the marketplace. And I think that it could certainly be something that could be worked in to a remote or a virtual inspection. Having an app that shows exactly what the fire alarm system is doing while the other systems that the fire alarm ties into are tested: doors, fire pumps, sprinkler, etc. So that question that Carl addressed that was submitted is there an NFPA standard for remote inspection adopted into the IBC, or will it be in the future? Kevin, can you let us know when NFPA 915 will be released as a completed standard?
Sure thing. If everything goes to plan, which it looks like it should, we should have our first draft meeting this year, sometime this summer 2021, and a second draft meeting in 2022. The document could then be potentially released in late 2023. So I target that time frame as a tentative estimate as going forward. And then, of course, for a variety of standards development groups, whether they want to choose to, the technical committees choose to reference 915. It's in draft development now. Again, it's online. You can read it for yourself. So it is out there in draft form, but it won't be an official standard until it's certified and gone through the process.
Okay, thank you for that update. And, you know, as it was indicated in the chat, NFPA and the International Code Council lets you get a free account. You just sign in with your email, create your own password, and then it enables you to submit code change proposals to any and all documents that you feel are necessary. Bassem, there's a piece in the chat about your presentation about a lot of the different components about it. And if you did like to hear what Bassem had, I believe it's July 14th or the 21st, Bassem?
I believe 14th, I believe.
The 14th. We'll be sending out an update, but Bassem will have his own presentation at the AFAA national platform on the 14th of July. We will send you a promotion if you did sign up for this, but it's going to be 1 hour for him to dig a little bit deeper into the experience and some of what he shared with us today. Do you see that question in the chat? Can you?
Yeah. Christophe, answering your question, although it makes a lot of sense, but as Kevin mentioned, the NFPA 915 is a general remote inspection standard. Definitely some guideline could be discussed with the code committee on how to create a filming script, but if we go into that road, then we're ending up rewriting other standards. It's not as easy. Additionally, it depends really on the region. So one of the reasons which pushed us at that time to create the filming scripts, NFPA was the main reference for us, like for firearm, it was NFPA 72 at the time. But the UAE fire code, the local code and standard, had its own requirements as well. And we didn't want our contractors and designers to miss the local requirements in addition to the international ones. So my recommendation is always, if we are going to do an in-person or a pre-recorded remote inspection, each project should be its own, has its own thing. We will sit with you, help you develop all the tools to make sure that your remote inspection process is successful. And if anyone has a question, you can always contact me via my email. I think we'll share all our contacts at the end at the emails which are going to be sent after the presentation.
Yes, the contact information, these presentations, and a recording of this presentation will be available on the AFAA New England website. Bill, did you still have a question? I saw you had your hand up. You took it down. Maybe we answered it. So while we're waiting, if anyone else has any other questions, I wanted to reach out and say thank you to Kristen at the NFPA and Dottie at the International Code Council for doing a lot of the initial heavy lifting before we were able to get Kevin and Carl to commit to this, and to Eric at Jensen Hughes for helping Automatic Fire Alarm Association New England and getting us connected with BASEM to really put this panel of these three experts together who have experience, wisdom, and knowledge to share on this topic. And it's very exciting to see, as Basem said, the possibility of what can be with the technology that we have on how to increase the quality, the expediency of our inspections in the built environment. I know that here in the Northeast, a lot of construction projects are now requiring Oculus virtual reality goggles to be on site for coordination meetings. So the technology is here, and it's affecting the way we work in the built environment. And it's very exciting to see how it's changing what we do on a day-to-day. Bill, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I had a quick emergency there. Hold on one second.
Yep.
There we go. I had to unmute the other computer. Anyways, there is nothing that precludes us from using this type of inspection at this time, right? In other words, if the authority having jurisdiction, if that's the only way that we can inspect, and I know when COVID first hit here, we were one of the very few departments in the Boston metro area that didn't shut down. And one of the reasons why was because we were able to use some remote inspection, and it worked out pretty good at the time. And so there's nothing in the code that would prevent us from using this until there is a standard, obviously.
Correct. We do have John Knapp representing the Southeastern Massachusetts Building Officials Association. John, are you still with us? Do you want to handle that?
No, I'm bouncing in between you and the phone here. So this intrigues me as far as what we're using. I do know here in Massachusetts that the State Electrical Board and Plumbing Board has explicitly said nothing for virtual inspections. But this is one of the things, this is why this kind of intrigued me to kind of get an answer to find out, to see it. I mean, we were doing virtual inspections on certain inspections, and that was one of my things that I was a little nervous about when I first heard about this, as far as you can do the whole thing. There are certain things that I feel that can't be done with virtual inspections, that needs to be done in live, if you will. However, we know that Abu Dhabi, you guys built the skyscrapers, all virtual. I mean, paperwork was all virtual, not virtual, but electronic. So do I think it can be done? Yes. But this is obviously things that Massachusetts is also going to have to look at as far as what inspections they're going to allow. I know through the whole pandemic, we did have inspections that were being done virtually, either maybe finals on small bathrooms or kitchens and stuff like that. I think definitely, but again, this is a new place for us that we're all learning about.
Thank you for jumping in and handling that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And also, you know, John Knapp for being on hand as a local building official and representing the Southeastern Massachusetts Building Officials Group. We appreciate you and your organization's support on this. Are there any, Bill, did that answer your question?
It sure did. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. So John, did you say that the Board of Electrical Examiners and the Board of Plumbing Examiners is silent on this issue, or their?
I have not had a conversation on it. I have spoken with my electrical inspector, and I have been informed that they are not to do a virtual inspection. And I don't know if that is going to change or if they've officially come out with anything on a white paper. I mean, I do have certain reservations. I'm not an electrical inspector, but I could see how there is certain reservations, if you will, that they would be nervous about doing a virtual inspection. But again, I also think it comes down to is what inspections are you going to do? I mean, even as your presentation that you guys have put on today for fire sprinkler, for suppression, 6 heads or less on a commercial building. You're not going through to do the whole thing, but I do think there's certain things that you can do virtually. But I won't speak for the board. They will obviously have to have that conversation. But like I said, we do have certain means to allow it on the building side. But under the electrical and the plumbing, because here in Massachusetts, we have those boards, they would have to make a definitive answer on that and then get a white paper out on that.
Excellent. Thanks for clarifying that.
You bet.
Gives us something to do next month. All right. Tina, wants this final inspection to be live. Yep. Okay. And I've also, thank you for putting that in the chat, Tina.
Yep.
And I've also heard from many engineering firms where, again, it's kind of a mix right now, but any inspection that would be requiring an affidavit, most engineering firms right now are feeling that it must be done in person for an inspection to qualify for an affidavit sign off. All right. Well, if we have no more questions, we are approaching 1:30, which was the advertised end of the meeting. The presenters are willing to stick around for any specific or nuanced questions. We do thank all the organizations that have supported this, advertised, MECA, the Southeastern Massachusetts Building Officials, the International Code Council, the NFPA, Jensen Hughes, AFAA, New England, through LinkedIn and many other channels and platforms. We appreciate everyone's support. Next month, we are talking about cloud-connected fire alarm systems specifically. We do have multiple manufacturers that would be part of another roundtable discussion, which kind of dovetails into this. So I would recommend that you stay tuned for that. We'll be advertising for BSEM in July. We're all taking August off, and by the grace of God, we'll be all back in person in September and October. So with that, we appreciate everyone. Thank you, John, Deb.
Thank you.
And especially to Carl and BSEM and Kevin for our presentations. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
everybody.
Have a good day.
Thanks,
Nice
everybody.
job.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Good day.